Beyonce has been famous for decades, yet time barely seems to touch her. Same skin, same presence, same control. While other stars change year by year, her image stays locked in place, polished and protected. But someone from inside the industry keeps pushing that question back into the spotlight. Jaguar Wright has just revealed Beyonce is anti-aging rituals, the voice that wouldn't stay quiet. When Jaguar Wright speaks, people lean in, even if they pretend not to. Her name resurfaces because every few months, the industry circles back to the same uncomfortable question. Why does someone who once had access to everything keep warning people after walking away from it all? Jaguar came up inside the R&B and hip-hop world when studio sessions were crowded with executives, managers, artists, and fixers who controlled careers with a single phone call. She was in the rooms where deals were made, loyalty was tested, and silence was expected. Her history matters because she didn't enter the industry yesterday, and she didn't leave quietly either. Jaguar worked alongside major names, sang on respected stages, and built relationships that most aspiring artists never touch. That proximity changes how her words land. When she talks about power structures, she's describing habits she watched repeat again and again. Long before social media rewarded shock value, she was already warning people about what happens behind closed doors when money, image, and fear mix together. Whenever industry rumors gain momentum, Beyonce becomes the gravitational point they orbit around. That isn't accidental. Beyonce exists in a category few artists ever reach. She isn't treated as a performer alone. She's treated as a brand, a standard, and a controlled universe. Every appearance feels intentional. Every word feels measured. Every absence feels planned. Her public image has remained tightly managed for decades. Interviews are rare. Personal details are selective. Access is limited to a small trusted circle that rarely changes. That level of control creates admiration, but it also creates curiosity. When people can't see behind the curtain, they start guessing what's there, especially when time moves forward and the image never seems to shift. Aging plays a huge role in that curiosity. Beyonce has been in the public eye since her teens, yet her appearance changes far less than people expect. That alone fuels speculation, even without any claims attached. In an industry where artists are dissected frame by frame, consistency becomes suspicious to some observers. Not because it proves anything, but because it breaks expectations people have been trained to hold. Silence adds to that effect. Former staff don't give tell-all interviews. Ex-assistants don't write books. Stylists rotate quietly without public fallout. Collaborators speak respectfully and move on. In Hollywood terms, that level of quiet is unusual. Beyonce's cultural influence amplifies everything further. She shapes trends, language, visuals, and identity. Her work gets analyzed like literature and decoded like scripture by fans and critics alike. Symbols and performances become talking points. Costumes become statements. Silence becomes intentional messaging. When art operates at that scale, people start believing nothing is accidental. Jaguar Wright's comments land inside that environment, which is why they spread so fast. When someone claims insider knowledge about a figure that unreachable, it feels like a crack forming in something solid. It's also important that Beyonce never responds directly. Addressing rumors gives them oxygen. Ignoring them lets them burn out on their own. Most of the time, that strategy works. But every so often, silence creates its own noise. The beauty industry behind the curtain. At the highest level of fame, beauty stops being personal and turns into infrastructure. Around major celebrities exists a full ecosystem designed to control every visible detail of the human body. Private trainers structure daily movement down to the minute. Nutritionists design intake schedules that dictate timing, portions, hydration, and supplements. Cosmetic doctors handle preventative work long before anything appears needed. Wellness consultants track stress, hormone cycles, inflammation, and sleep quality. Image managers oversee how all of it presents publicly, making sure nothing breaks the illusion. None of this happens casually. These routines are enforced quietly, consistently, and without debate. At this level, there is no off day. Sleep is scheduled. Travel is calculated to reduce swelling and fatigue. Light exposure is managed. Food is weighed. Blood work is reviewed. Deviations are noted. If something changes on camera, someone traces it back to a cause immediately. To outsiders, this sounds excessive. Inside these circles, it's normal. Once an artist reaches a certain financial value, their body becomes part of the product. That shifts how decisions are made. Choices stop being about comfort and start being about optimization. If something improves performance, appearance, or longevity by even a small margin, it gets tested. Isolation plays a role too. Many top-tier performers live in controlled environments during work cycles. Limited social contact, restricted access, approved visitors only. This isn't paranoia, it's efficiency. Fewer variables mean fewer risks. Emotional distractions affect sleep. Sleep affects skin. Skin affects image. Everything connects. Monitoring becomes constant. Trainers report changes in stamina. Nutrition teams track water retention. Medical teams flag inflammation. Managers notice posture, facial tension, and mood. The goal is consistency. The result is pressure that never shuts off. This is where discomfort begins to creep in. When control reaches this depth, personal agency shrinks. The artist may agree to it, even welcome it, because the system rewards compliance. The better the results, the more extreme the methods become. Boundaries shift slowly. What once felt intense becomes routine. What once felt optional becomes expected. This context matters when listening to Jaguar Wright. Her claims sit on top of an industry that already pushes bodies and minds far past what most people experience. The beauty industry doesn't need dark motives to create harmful pressure. The structure alone can do that. When success depends on looking untouched by time, every sign of aging feels like failure. That fear drives compliance. People accept stricter rules because the alternative feels worse. Over time, language changes. People stop saying routine and start saying process, then discipline, then commitment. Eventually, it becomes something closer to belief. When someone survives years under that pressure and walks away, their descriptions sound intense because the environment was intense. That's why Jaguar's words land differently for people who understand how these systems work. Because when discipline becomes identity, the language people use to describe it begins to change. Ritual language. Words like ritual, offering, and energy didn't appear randomly in celebrity rumors. They emerge naturally in environments built on repetition, symbolism, and secrecy. In elite circles, especially those blending performance and branding, symbolic language becomes a shortcut for meaning. A ritual, in simple terms, is repeated behavior tied to belief. In performance psychology, rituals help athletes and artists control anxiety and focus. In branding, ritual language creates mystique. Fans connect more deeply when processes feel meaningful rather than mechanical. Saying "this is part of my ritual" sounds intentional. It sounds powerful. It frames discipline as purpose rather than control. Spiritual language enters through wellness culture. Energy becomes a way to describe mood, health, and presence without medical terms. Offering becomes shorthand for sacrifice, meaning effort, restraint, or personal cost. None of this requires belief in anything supernatural. It's metaphor used to explain pressure. Fans notice patterns long before headlines do. A familiar assistant stops appearing in photos. A stylist who once traveled everywhere quietly fades out. A collaborator praises the work, then moves on without explanation. No drama, no interviews, no posts, just absence. Over time, these disappearances stack up, and people start connecting dots because silence keeps repeating. Inside the music business, this isn't unusual. Non-disclosure agreements are standard at the highest level. They cover schedules, health details, conflicts, creative disagreements, and private conversations. They don't only protect secrets, they protect power. When someone signs one, they agree to never tell their side publicly, even if the relationship ends badly. Breaking it risks lawsuits, blacklisting, and permanent damage to future work. Settlements work the same way. Quiet payments come with quiet expectations. No statements, no hints, no vague comments. Silence becomes part of the deal. For people whose careers depend on reputation and connections, that silence feels safer than truth. The industry remembers who talks. It also remembers who stays quiet. Reputation pressure does the rest. Assistants and stylists build careers on trust. One accusation can end years of work overnight. Speaking up doesn't guarantee support. It often guarantees isolation. So people choose distance instead. They leave the circle and keep their mouths shut. From the outside, it looks like nothing happened. From the inside, it feels like survival. This is where Jaguar Wright keeps pointing. When she talks about people who knew too much, she's describing a culture where knowing anything sensitive creates risk. Knowledge alone becomes dangerous if it can't be controlled. People step away quietly because noise attracts attention, and attention invites consequences. Absence creates its own tension. Fans don't need accusations to feel something is off. They notice patterns of silence around the same figures. They see loyalty rewarded and distance punished. They watch former insiders speak warmly while never sharing details. That gap between praise and silence feels deliberate. The industry prefers it that way. Public harmony keeps brands stable. Questions create instability. So the system trains people early. Be grateful, be discreet, be replaceable. If you leave, leave cleanly. No mess, no stories. Over time, this produces a strange effect. The louder the rumors get online, the quieter real insiders become. Not because they agree with the rumors, but because they know how much they stand to lose. Silence becomes currency. The more valuable the brand, the more silence surrounds it. Youth, control, and the fear of irrelevance. In entertainment, youth is a deadline, especially for women at the top. The industry tracks age relentlessly. Cameras catch everything. Social media magnifies it. Every change becomes content. Every flaw becomes a talking point. That pressure doesn't fade with success. It intensifies. Relevance equals security. Tours, endorsements, licensing, and legacy deals depend on public perception. When an artist represents an empire, aging threatens more than ego. It threatens income streams, jobs, and influence. That fear drives decisions quietly and constantly, and control becomes the response. Control of schedule, control of appearance, control of narrative, control of who speaks and who disappears. Youth preservation turns into risk management. Every routine promises a little more time at the top. Every delay feels like protection. This is why extreme measures become tempting. Not because someone wants to chase perfection, but because staying visible keeps everything else standing. When relevance drops, support drops. Teams shrink. Power fades. That knowledge sits in the background of every choice. Women feel this pressure earlier and harder. The industry praises maturity while rewarding youth. That contradiction creates anxiety that never fully settles. Staying flawless becomes a shield. Looking unchanged becomes proof of control. Jaguar's claims sit inside this fear. She describes an environment where people push limits because the alternative feels worse. Losing relevance feels like losing safety. Losing safety feels like losing everything built over decades. When survival depends on image, discipline escalates naturally. Rules tighten. Oversight increases. Language shifts. Routine becomes identity. Control becomes comfort. People convince themselves that intensity equals necessity. This fear also explains loyalty. People stay quiet because speaking risks exile. Exile means invisibility. Invisibility means irrelevance. That chain keeps systems intact even when individuals feel trapped by them. Fans, symbols, and internet decoding culture. The moment an artist reaches Beyonce's level, the audience stops watching casually. Every lyric gets paused. Every frame gets zoomed. Every costume choice gets screenshotted and debated. Online fandom doesn't behave like a fan club anymore. It behaves like a research group that never logs off. With Beyonce, this effect multiplies. Her music isn't released casually. Albums arrive with visuals. Visuals arrive with symbols. Stage designs feel architectural. Colors repeat, gestures return. When patterns repeat, people assume intention. And when intention feels hidden, decoding begins. Lyrics are the first target. Fans pull single lines apart and compare them across albums. Words that appear once get compared to words used years earlier. Metaphors become clues. Silence between verses becomes meaningful. When themes of power, rebirth, legacy, or endurance show up repeatedly, people start asking why those ideas stay front and center. Then visuals take over. Music videos become case studies. Fans pause scenes frame by frame. They circle shapes, lighting, hand movements, body positioning. Costumes get traced back to cultural references, historical figures, or spiritual imagery. Even when a choice is aesthetic, repetition turns it into evidence for something deeper. Stage design fuels this even more. Concert sets use symbols large enough to dominate arenas. Shapes, stairs, platforms, lighting angles. When fans see the same symbols reappear across tours, they treat them like a language meant to be decoded rather than explained. Fashion plays its part. Jewelry choices, color palettes, fabrics, headpieces. Fans track it all. A single outfit can generate hours of discussion, not because of gossip, but because of perceived messaging. When someone rarely explains themselves, everything becomes explanation. Once that happens, the internet does what it always does. It connects dots faster than facts can keep up. Old clips resurface. Lyrics get reinterpreted. Visuals get reassigned, meaning they may never have had. Silence from official sources allows imagination to fill gaps freely. Crowdsourced investigation feels empowering. People believe they're uncovering truth together. The process feels logical. The conclusions feel earned. Even when the foundation is thin, repetition gives it weight. The more a theory is shared, the more real it feels. That's how modern fandom works. It fills silence with meaning. It treats art as a puzzle. And when silence stretches long enough, imagination grows confident. Why no one ever responds directly? From the outside, silence looks suspicious. To insiders, silence looks strategic. At the top level of celebrity, responses aren't emotional reactions. They're calculated decisions shaped by legal teams, brand managers, and long-term risk planning. Addressing rumors gives them shape. A denial acknowledges the claim exists. Once acknowledged, it can be quoted, clipped, and shared forever. Even a calm statement becomes fuel. People analyze wording. Tone gets dissected. What isn't said becomes another theory. Ignoring claims often works better. Most rumors burn out when they don't receive oxygen. Attention moves on. Algorithms shift. Silence lets the news cycle die naturally. Legal strategy plays a major role. Responding publicly can create liability. Statements can be used in court. Words can be interpreted as admissions or contradictions. Silence avoids that risk entirely. From a legal standpoint, saying nothing is often the safest option. Brand protection matters too. Major artists aren't individuals anymore. They represent companies, partnerships, and global markets. A response doesn't affect one reputation. It affects many. Silence keeps the brand stable while storms pass outside it. Risk management teams think in years, not days. They weigh whether a rumor will still matter in 6 months. Most don't. Addressing every accusation creates a precedent that invites more. Silence sets a boundary. It communicates that not everything deserves engagement. This strategy also relies on time. Public attention is short. Even intense speculation fades when there's nothing new to react to. Silence stretches the timeline until interest drops. The downside is that silence leaves space. That space gets filled by voices like Jaguars and by online decoding culture. The longer silence holds, the louder unofficial narratives become. But from a power perspective, unofficial narratives are easier to manage than official controversies. They lack authority. They fragment easily. They argue with each other. Silence lets them exhaust themselves. That's why no direct response ever comes. Not because the claims are true, not because they're false, but because responding creates more problems than it solves. Silence becomes a tool, a wall, a filter. It keeps control centralized while chaos stays external. And that leaves viewers sitting with an unresolved tension. If fans keep decoding, insiders keep quiet, and voices like Jaguars keep speaking, the story doesn't end.